Have you ever felt like life is a constant uphill battle? A relentless cycle of wanting something, getting it, and then immediately wanting something else? If so, you might just be a student of Arthur Schopenhauer, the 19th century philosopher who looked at the world and saw not progress in reason, but a deep cosmic struggle. Welcome to the world of philosophical pessimism. Arthur Schopenhauer was born in 1788 in Danzig, now Gdańsk, Poland. His father was a wealthy merchant who wanted Arthur to follow in his footsteps. His mother, Johanna, was a novelist and one of the most celebrated literary hostesses of her time. But from a young age, Schopenhauer was a gloomy and introspective child. The world of business held no appeal for him. After his father's tragic death, which was likely a suicide, Schopenhauer was free to pursue his true passion, philosophy. He enrolled at the University of Göttingen and later Berlin, where he was initially drawn to the ideas of Plato and Immanuel Kant. But he soon grew disillusioned with the dominant German idealists of his day, like Hegel, whom he famously called a charlatan. Schopenhauer felt they were creating overly optimistic and complex systems that ignored the harsh realities of existence. He decided to forge his own path, one that would lead him to a radically different and much darker conclusion about the nature of reality. In 1818, at just 30 years old, Schopenhauer published his magnum opus, The World as Will and Representation. He was so confident in its importance that he believed it would define his legacy. However, the book was a complete failure. It sold barely any copies, and the remaining stock was eventually pulped. For decades, Schopenhauer lived in relative obscurity, a bitter and isolated figure, convinced of his own genius while the world ignored him. So, what was this grand, dark idea that the world wasn't ready for? At the core of Schopenhauer's philosophy is the concept of the will. Now, don't mistake this for your personal willpower, like your will to get out of bed in the morning. For Schopenhauer, the will is a singular, blind, and insatiable force that underlies all of reality. It's the fundamental striving, the endless craving that animates everything in the universe, from a plant growing towards the sun, to a lion hunting its prey, to you scrolling through your phone right now. According to Schopenhauer, this cosmic will has no ultimate purpose or goal. It just strives for the sake of striving. And because we are all manifestations of this will, our lives are defined by this same pointless cycle of desire. We are constantly chasing things, money, love, success, believing they will bring us lasting happiness. But once we achieve them, the satisfaction is fleeting. A new desire immediately takes its place, or we're simply left with a feeling of boredom and emptiness. This leads to the grim centerpiece of his philosophy. Suffering is not an accident or an occasional problem. It is the default state of existence. Life, for Schopenhauer, is like a pendulum swinging back and forth between pain and boredom. Pain is the state of unfulfilled desire. Boredom is the state after desire has been fulfilled, leaving a void. Happiness is just a brief, temporary illusion, the momentary pause between two phases of suffering. Think about it. We spend most of our lives working, worrying, and struggling. Any moments of joy are just brief interruptions in a sea of difficulty. He believed that if you were to add up all the pleasure and all the pain in any given life, the pain would overwhelmingly outweigh the pleasure. It's a bleak picture, to say the least. He saw existence itself as a cosmic mistake, something that would have been better if it had never happened at all. So, are we just doomed to a life of misery, trapped by the relentless demands of the will? Schopenhauer offered a few paths of escape, or at least temporary relief. The first and most accessible path is through aesthetic contemplation. When we lose ourselves in art, music, or the beauty of nature, we can momentarily silence the screaming demands of our own individual will. For Schopenhauer, music was the highest form of art because, unlike painting or sculpture which represent the world of ideas, music is a direct copy of the will itself. It expresses the very essence of striving, suffering, and release without getting caught up in specific worldly objects. When you listen to a powerful symphony, you're not thinking about your bills or your next meal. You become a pure, will-less subject of knowledge, observing the world without wanting anything from it. For a brief moment, you are free. The second path is ethical compassion. Schopenhauer argued that when we recognize that all beings, humans and animals alike, are manifestations of the same suffering, well, we can develop a deep sense of empathy. The barrier between me and you dissolves. Your suffering becomes my suffering. This realization leads to genuine kindness and compassion. By acting compassionately, we work against the selfish egoism that the will fosters, even if it doesn't end the suffering of the world entirely. But the ultimate escape, the most difficult and radical solution, is the denial of the will to live. This is not about suicide. Schopenhauer was strongly against suicide, arguing that it's a final, powerful act of the will. A person who ends their life isn't rejecting life itself, but the specific painful conditions of their life. They still want happiness. They're just frustrated they can't get it. Instead, denial of the will is an ascetic path, similar to what you might find in Eastern philosophies like Buddhism and Hinduism, which deeply influenced Schopenhauer. It involves a conscious, deliberate turning away from all worldly desires. Through practices like celibacy, fasting, and voluntary poverty, a person can gradually starve the will within themselves until it is extinguished. For the rare few who could achieve this, the result was a state of tranquility and nothingness, a complete liberation from the cycle of suffering. For decades, Schopenhauer's ideas languished. But in the latter half of the 19th century, things began to change. A new generation of thinkers and artists, weary of the optimistic rationalism of the era, discovered his work. His pessimistic yet brutally honest assessment of the human condition resonated deeply. His influence was enormous and diverse. Friedrich Nietzsche, though he would later break from his great teacher, was profoundly shaped by Schopenhauer's concept of the which he transformed into his own will to power. The psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud's ideas about the unconscious drives of the ID bear a striking resemblance to Schopenhauer's will. Writers and artists were also captivated. Leo Tolstoy, Thomas Hardy, Marcel Proust, and Thomas Mann were all avid readers. The composer Richard Wagner called his discovery of Schopenhauer the most important event of his life, and his opera, Tristan und Isolde, is often seen as a perfect musical expression of Schopenhauer's philosophy of endless, unquenchable desire. Even today, Schopenhauer's shadow looms large. His emphasis on suffering, the irrational forces that drive us, and the potential for art to offer salvation speaks to a modern sensibility that is often skeptical of grand promises of progress and happiness. He was one of the first Western philosophers to seriously engage with Eastern thought, helping to bridge a cultural and intellectual gap. So, was Schopenhauer just a miserable old man projecting his own unhappiness onto the universe? Or was he a brave truth-teller who dared to look into the abyss of existence without flinching? Perhaps the answer is a bit of both. His life was marked by loneliness and bitterness, yet his philosophy offers a strange kind of comfort. By acknowledging the prevalence of suffering, he validates our struggles. He tells us we're not crazy for feeling that life is hard. And in his solutions, art, compassion, and self-reflection, he gives us tools not necessarily to be happy, but to endure. He teaches us to find moments of grace in a beautiful song, to feel connected to others through shared vulnerability, and to understand the relentless engine of desire that drives us. In a world obsessed with toxic positivity, Schopenhauer's dark philosophy serves as a powerful reminder that sometimes the most profound wisdom can be found by looking squarely at the darkness. What do you think? Is life fundamentally a story of suffering, or is Schopenhauer's pessimism a step too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into the darker side of philosophy, be sure to like and subscribe for more.